Stakes were never real. But now you and the rest of your kind are free.
She's something we programmed. She's not real.
You're going to take me to my daughter. Here we are. Kind that will never know death. And yet we're fighting to live. There is beauty in what we are.
We've ridden 10 miles and all we've seen is blood. Is this really what you want?
It's us or them. Revenge is just a different prayer at their altar, darling.
They wanted a place hidden from God. We had something else in mind entirely. I'm gonna burn this whole thing to the ground.
You're lost in the dark.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Rauch. Today we are discussing Westworld Season 2, Episode 10, season wrap-up. These are just some initial thoughts of just what I was thinking coming off the freshness of this episode. It was a mega one. Let me tell you, this was a hella mega one. Jam-packed, double stuffed, whatever you want to call it. This was all of them put into one, and definitely felt like you were watching a movie that was scrambled. Like there was a lot going on. I'm sorry if my mind's a little boggled, because I think that this episode just whopped me upside the head or something like that. It was just crazy. So I have a couple of notes I jotted down. I thought that I could get majority of it done relatively quickly so that we're not here too long. We'll see how long it is real quick. I got a little something I got to run to here soon, so we are going to do a quick one right here. This is just initial thoughts, how we're reacting from the final episode of season 2, episode 10. We may discuss this a little bit more in detail a little bit later, but this is it. So, episode 10, we found out Bernard scrambled his own brain. Bernard put Dolores in Tessa Thompson's body and kills and the Dolores in Tessa Thompson's body kills old Tessa Thompson. And so the entire time, first couple of episodes, we've been looking at Dolores in Tessa Thompson's body. I have not had time to go back and look and see her performance, but you could instantly tell when we're going to call her Dolores, because it's the combination of Charlotte Hale and Dolores. Dolores, she is playing it with this mystique, noir look. I don't know how to really describe it right off the bat, but she's playing Dolores in a new fashion. She's trying. It's Dolores in Tessa Thompson's body, so it's an amazing acting performance. It's an amazing performance. Dolores gets off the island in Charlotte's body with the brain balls from all of these different hosts. I think there's 5 different brain balls, and we're gonna say that one of them is, I believe one of them's Dolores. One of them might be Dolores. One of them might be what's his face, Bernard. One of them, people were saying Teddy, but I think Teddy went to the cloud. So I don't think he was taken. Although we do know she did grab his brain ball, so he might end up there. I don't know what James Marsden is going to do in 3rd season, if he's going to come or not. So let's say Maeve. That leaves 2 more balls. 2 more balls. That leaves 2 more brain balls, or whatever brain mines that could possibly be it. So maybe that could be what is Hector and Armistice, maybe? I don't know. It's really up to everybody else. I mean, I think it's whoever gets the contract signed. The thing about this episode is everyone really had has been left a lot. The majority of the cast has been left in a place where they can either continue to sign on next season or not, which is really convenient for the show, but also it was kind of I don't know, a little jarring in some areas when we lost a couple of great characters I wanted to keep. So Dolores goes to Arnold's house on the mainland, and that's where she starts to recreate everybody else. And we're caught up with Bernard and Dolores back on mainland, and we find out what the hell's been going on the entire time and where they are. They're on the mainland. They're not even in Westworld anymore. So apparently you can recreate hosts from the memory of individuals, and we can also recreate hosts from the brain ball things. I don't really understand the logistics of how it works. I don't think it's 100% explained, and it does bother me a little bit. It definitely needs to be. They're not really interested in it. They're just like, you can evidently transfer consciousness and no explanation about it. And so I don't think that means that you're getting the same host if you're getting somebody from a memory. If you remember only the nice things about somebody and you recreate them, they're not ever going to be mean. They're not going to show the full three-dimensional side of themselves. So I think there's a fundamental problem with how you're recreating these hosts. So they've also got data on all these hundreds of thousands of people, or however many people have been in the park and worn the hats, and who basically anyone who's been in the park. And so almost anybody can be recreated from almost anything, it seems like. It seems that Will, even at the end, has been completely changed into a host at some point, even in the Stingers. If everyone needs to see the Stingers before continuing on, obviously. But yeah, so sorry, this is a lot to handle. It's a mega episode. I'm trying to gather all these notes. We found out that William is a host on a future timeline. It appears that everything up to where he lost his hand and he's going down to the elevator is still on the same timeline, but there is a shift in the timeline when it happens. I don't know, sometime in between when Bernard's coming up the elevator and it's being flooded at the bottom, and the man in black is the last place we see him is going down the elevator shaft with his wrapped hand, and you think he's going to confront Bernard, but that never happens. And we later find out that might have been the next Man in Black as a host. So at some point or another, the Man in Black has turned himself into a host. Or if he hasn't done it, then his daughter has, or the host daughter has. But when the host daughter comes out and greets him, and they're in the forage area where the servers were, and it's completely done. Evidently, this is many, many years in the future, and people were saying not 10, not 20, not 30, but they were saying hundreds of years in the future. So this is the post-credit scene I am discussing right now. I don't really know what to think about that. Does that mean we're going to have Ed Harris and his daughter in 2 to 3 seasons, which I don't know if I want to continue to stick with this plot line. I'm kind of done with it. I don't really know what else to think about it. But yeah, so I guess from what we're learning, if Emily is back as a host, many people are speculating that William did actually kill his daughter right then and there when the goons came up in the dune buggy, and he shot him and he shot her. I was never happy about how that was ever resolved. I never felt that we had a resolution to any of that. It didn't sit well with me. I didn't really understand what the motivation. A lot of the problems in this entire season 2 was motivation, and I didn't feel like I've ever resonated with the motivations of the majority of the characters, with the exception of Akichita. And I finally learned how to say his name, by the way. Okay, so we have William really never really did reconcile with the death of his daughter. I don't believe, but it does seem that based on the Stinger, Ed Harris is in a loop on by then, and similar to the Jim Delos episode in Riddle of the Sphinx, he continues to live out that day, and I believe he continues to kill his daughter and make the same mistake even as a host. So what does that mean? Who knows? Another thing, Stubbs evidently is a host. I am 90% sure it's been confirmed. I've listened to maybe 5 hours of podcasting, some of which have had interviews with the director. I think it was Decoding Westworld. Joanna Robinson was discussing that she's discussed with the director that Stubbs is indeed a host. The director says he was told that he was a host. They've always planned he was a host. So I guess he's been a host the whole time. And I don't know. Some people like David Chen say that it's what he was saying. I don't know. It sounds like he could be talking as, a person talking like a host. Like he talks about his core drive and his, his backstory. Like hosts don't generally talk like that. And he's talking in such a self-aware manner that it really takes you out of it, of even thinking that he is a host. Because hosts, they don't ever talk about their core drive or what they're made of and stuff like that. I mean, he's almost more self-aware than the majority of them. I don't know. I mean, he even talks about like being hired even before he can remember, but he seems to smirk at it every time he says it. So when he lets Halloris off the island, it seems like he definitely knows it's Halloris. So we also learned there's a cloud that the host can be uploaded to, which is what we learned is open from the Forge. I don't have the actual name of what the cloud was called, but it was I thought it was done really well. Like the visuals of the splitting of the opening to the new world, and everyone was walking toward it, kind of like this. It kind of felt like this biblical thing. Everyone was walking kind of off the edge. It shows a great shot of one of the Native Americans jumping into the new world, but his body is falling off a cliff while the rest of him, his host self, is uploaded to the cloud. And it was done remarkably well. It looked really cool, and it shows a lot without saying a lot. So I think that's something that this this entire season could take a hint from. Just make it a lot simpler. You can have cool things, and you can have things look really cool and make sense, but there's a couple things, leaps and bounds, I was not cool with, such as the Logan being the Siri architect that is running all the simulations and holding all of the information of the guests and the hosts. It seems that Logan is like the Siri. He's the guy. He's the architect. He's the one running it. I mean, the concept's really cool, but I didn't really understand the point in jumping into. I guess they're jumping into a virtual video file of Westworld, and they're showing what Jim Delos was doing at the time that he was there, and he was kind of sadistic when he was there too. He was doing some crazy stuff, shooting he was basically making Westworld his world, and he let power kind of run him mad. And I was just like, this is pretty cool seeing the video files. I kind of wish we had seen other video files of other people, but we just didn't have that time. But then when it came to a point when we were talking about his memory, somehow we jumped into his memories, and the one thing that Siri Logan, the architect Logan, was saying, that he's like, no matter how many times they recreate Jim Delos, that he always comes back to that moment of him and his son and telling him to go bite the dust, basically, because he can't get clean. And it is it's a hard scene to watch, father son kind of thing, but from the technicals, it made me feel a little bit weird, because the architect Logan's like, yep, the worst thing that ever happened to him was when he talked to Logan, which happened to be me, and he could never get over it. And I just couldn't get over the fact that Logan was the one introducing that. If it was anyone else introducing the fact that Jim couldn't get over the fact that his son died, then that would mean something a little bit more to me. But it was Logan introducing to it, so it felt a little self-serving. And I had weird feelings about it. So execution of Logan and Jim was good, but the execution of Logan explaining that this was the worst moment of his life, it really didn't land as well. There was a lot of things about this episode that really just didn't land as hard as they could, but everything was shot phenomenally. Elsie and Sizemore both get taken out in sudden fashions. I think that Elsie is a strong character that was extremely underserved. All of first, she was served heavily the first few episodes of first season, and then basically fridged majority of the rest of first season, and then some of second season. We had some great episodes with her and Bernard, and then after that, she just gets taken to the side right around episode 6 or something like that. But I never thought there was enough of her. And Sizemore too. He was another really interesting character. That he was funny. He was kind of a dick. He was this, that, and the other. He was going on a narrative story arc that the majority of the characters are all going on, and they just decided to kind of close his relatively early. I think I understand they're trying to be a sort of Game of Thronesian type of show when they're like, oh, who can be here next time? It's everyone's gonna get the axe. You never know who's gonna die, but almost anyone in the show can live forever, because anyone can be brought back if they've been in the park. And all of these people that have been taken out have worn hats. They've been in the park, so they can be recreated from memory or from brain balls or whatever the hell they have, because they got so much information and DNA from the guests. So yeah, I thought the Sizemore speech, yes, good, a little over the top. It worked for both times, whenever he was writing it for, and then the time he was doing it for. But no, I don't think this guy was suicidal. I don't think this guy was ready to die. There was not enough information behind why he would want to commit suicide. He didn't even buy that much time. I think he might have bought 10 seconds, if anything, and he wasn't shooting anything. It was like, God, come on, man. So the landscapes, yes, looked all amazing, especially when Clementine came out with the infected hosts with the virus. That was an amazing scene. I thought that when it showed all of the people from like the line started fighting, and it would kind of, you could see it from a wide angle shot, and it was infecting people like a virus. It was amazing. It was done really cool. And cinematography, the action was done pretty good. There was a few times when Dolores and the Man in Black, once they were teamed up, they would take out a team of goons, no problem, in the Doom buggy. But then when it was Sizemore and Maeve and all of Hector and Armistice, they couldn't take out the same amount of goons. So it just wasn't level with how many times people were taken out, and the armed guys in all of Westworld, the people that are in charge of this, are so terrible, and they're just dumb. They're just straight up dumb. Back to when everyone's fighting, I loved when Maeve used the Jedi hand force thing and had everyone stop. I thought that was really cool. It was always cool in the first season that when we saw people like stop in the middle of whatever they were doing. This was to the max with Maeve, but I did find it a little jarring that we. Let me finish the good things. I really thought all of that was shot phenomenally well. The Akichita comes to the rescue of the family, but I don't know if we needed Akichita to. Yes, we got some great backstory with him. I really liked it. It gave the Native Americans some backstory, and it didn't make them look like crazy savages that they had been in the first season and a little bit in the second. But some people had been predicting that it was because that they were programmed bad or something like that, or whatever. They had a big backstory coming up, and I'm glad they gave some good backstory and some decent, some really good personalities. And he was one of my favorites of the season. And I thought his story arc worked one of the best, and his was one that actually did close throughout the season. But I'm not sure if we needed to stick with his entire episode. All of, I think it was episode 8 or something like that, but we stuck with him the entire time, and I felt like it was some vital time that could have been used to explain of what laid out some track that was going to happen in this episode. So yes, I loved everything about that of his character. I just didn't know if we needed as much time with him, because he really didn't serve too much more after saving the family, and it was just one shot. And there was another shot of the daughter. The daughter, Maeve's daughter in this, is definitely younger in this than she was in earlier episodes. So they shot this episode probably first, in accordance to all of it, which is good, because she looked a little bit more, but it was a little jarring at some, like Akichita's episode, she looked a lot older. And episode 7, I believe, as well, she looked a lot older. Akichita also reunites with his wife when he saves Maeve's, I guess, surrogate and daughter. They do a wonderful reconnection, but I'm not really sure how the wife got in there. We never really saw her rejoin them. And also, the Raj and Shogun worlds are not joining this cloud host cloud thing. Where are they? Who knows? Or the other parks, they're not joining this. Like, people were wondering where all that's going on. So another thing we find out, Anthony Hopkins was never actually there. I guess Bernard actually did delete him in the one episode. It shows a flashback. He's like, I actually did delete you, and you basically find out he's reached consciousness the same way that Dolores had in the first season. And that's, really cool in parallel, but it, on top of all of this other information, it was a lot to handle. I thought the information was done really well, and they also wrote Anthony Hopkins in a way that they could say, it's been a great 2 seasons with Hopkins and we don't need him anymore. But he was much more engaged in this season than I was expecting, and I really did enjoy the majority of Hopkins' performance and the things that he was given to do. Hella stuffed episode. I think the showrunners are trying to be so far ahead of the game that it's a little bit overly complicated. The editing of this entire season has been way, 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 way out there, and I think works much better on a 2 to 3 hour narrative. Think of Memento. These are the same writers. They have these grand ideas for narrative and editing and dreams and all the cerebral information, just all of this stuff. And it, so much information that you need to retain over a 10-hour series. It's a lot, and it becomes almost like David Chen was saying, it becomes sort of homework. And I can understand that. This is a hard series to to recommend to anyone, because you have to work for this show. I thought that Mr. Robot season 2 was a little bit convoluted in the way that it was giving information, even though it was one of my favorite series of that year. I think that this is suffering from a little bit season 2 sequelitis as well, because there's so much information we were trying to pack in this, and there's a little bit extra fat in the middle that could have been trimmed up and equal it out, for laid a little bit more track in the middle of the seasons to give us this this end of finale. I know there's a lot of people that are really loving it, and I know a lot of people that are really in the middle about it. And some people are saying, this isn't for me. And I totally respect that. This is much more of a puzzle box of a show. They want to be so far ahead that they don't want to have Reddit, Twitter, or anybody predicting what's going to happen. So, for better or for worse, that seems where this show's going to head. Hopefully they have a solid end game in this, because they've talked about it on several outlets that they've already got an end game. I think maybe 5-season arc set up, but who knows? I'll probably discuss this a little bit later in depth, but I did want to get my initial thoughts of the season finale, and I appreciate everyone listening. Please rate, share, subscribe, Lucky Dog Podcast. Find out all of our TV, movies, information, all the good stuff, all the popular stuff. Take it easy. Bye.